tears and play the characters that you cheer. So join us as we go below the frame. On this episode of Below the Frame, I'm talking to Muppet performer and Star Wars cast member Mike Quinn. We will be talking about the Muppet Show, Star Wars, puppetry, of course, and a lot more. He's got a lot of great stories to tell. Plus, we will be learning about headbands in puppetry and asking a puppeteer about not puppets. It's time to go below the frame. Go below the frame. Welcome to Below the Frame with me, Matt Vogel. If you like this here podcast, I'm asking you, as I do every episode, to please rate and review. We are at the halfway mark of this season, I think, and I think it's going pretty well. We have had chats with the likes of Louise Gold and Joey Mazzarino, Noel McNeil, Debbie Spinney, so many others, and we got a whole first season of shows in the bank that you can go back to anytime you like. So please, listen away. And as always, thank you for listening to Below the Frame. Today, I am speaking with Mike Quinn. Now, if you do not know Mike, he has been around for a long time with the Muppets, as you're going to see today. I mean, all the way back to the Muppet Show. And this interview is chock full of little anecdotes and memories from Jim Henson and the Dark Crystal and so much more of Muppet history. A lot of stories I've never, ever heard before. So if you love that kind of thing, if you love that kind of history, you're going to love this interview. And, you know, Mike also plays a prominent character in an iconic sci-fi series of films that you may have heard of. Why am I being unnecessarily vague? I really don't know. Maybe to keep up the suspense. Plus, you know, it doesn't really matter. I mentioned it in the tease. So, you know, we're going to talk about Star Wars. Anyway, none of that matters because it's time to throw to the interview. All right, here we go. Let's go below the frame with Mike Quinn. So are you recording on GarageBand?
And I am now recording on GarageBand, yes.
What do you call the place where you park your cars in England? Is it a garage or a garage?
That's been a debate. I was reading up about this, actually. The BBC were the people that decided whether it should be garage or garage. And during, like, wartime, at one point it was garage. And then they switched to garage for a while, and then they've gone back to garage again, like several decades ago. So it was kind of like even the BBC couldn't decide in their formal days what it should be. So, but normally,
why did they get to decide? Why was it the BBC that got to decide?
Because they were government run and they decided everything about the country. But normally, typically, garage is considered a little posh, and garage is like London. You know, it's a little bit more common.
Okay.
Garage. Let's go down the garage.
All right, well, so what will you be recording on today then?
Oh, I'll be recording on GarageBand. Garage.
Fantastic.
Band.
All right.
Multi-band garage band.
All right. Are you ready to do this, Mike?
We're good.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. I'm just going to introduce you and then we'll go. Here we go. Mike Quinn, welcome to Below the Frame. How you doing?
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. It's good. Thank you so much. I love your show, so this is a real honor.
Oh, well, I am super excited to talk to you today because, well, first of all, I haven't seen you in person in a year and change.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been too long, which is very sad. But here we are. We're slowly coming out of the woodwork again now and reconnecting and making plans. And it's a very exciting time for growth and rebirth.
Oh, I like that. That's very well. Maybe we'll get into that as we talk today. I'm going to start though, Mike, way back at the beginning, and I want to know where'd you grow up?
Oh, I grew up at home. Yeah. Sorry,
This is the typical Mike Quinn. Saucy answers.
Yeah, the thing is, I was being serious, but no. Actually, the thing is, I was born in Chatham in Kent, which I believe is where you did some of your locations for Muppets Most Wanted. At the dockyards or something.
Oh, yeah, the dockyard. Yeah, that's like south, isn't it?
Well, south? South and east.
Ish.
Yeah. East.
West, east, south.
So I was there for about 2 years, and then we moved to North London, and I grew up in a town called Enfield, North London, just sort of outside of London itself, near the Greenbelt. So,
and well, tell me about growing up there. What was that like?
It was very sort of suburban, I suppose. Now it's sort of become like an extension of London as London has just grown and exploded. But it was quite normal, I suppose. I think Enfield would have been a beautiful town back in the 1930s, and they used to have trams and stuff, so it's amazing to see how it used to be. But things were very, very kind of regular, I guess, growing up there. My parents would have a stall on the local market on weekends there. We were just sort of a normal family. Well, actually, when I say normal, that is a relative term. I mean, most things were sort of normal, but my sister was actually in the entertainment business as a child performer, so that was the not normal part, I suppose.
I see. What kind of things did your sister do?
She was a singer. She played piano. She acted on stage in London as a kid, at the London Palladium and other places.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's 2 years older than me. So I used to sort of hang out backstage a lot and sort of enjoy all the mechanics of the scenery and how things worked. And I was really quite intrigued by that. She also, for a little while, had a ventriloquist ventriloquist dummy. So she was like probably 9 or 10 or something like that. So, when everyone was out of the room and this thing was just sitting there staring at me, I'd start playing with it and sort of trying to make it come to life. So I'd be, I don't know, I suppose I'd be 8 or 9 or something, I'm not sure. But it was like an early animatronic, if you want to look at it like that.
Did the eyes
Yeah,
move?
exactly. They had like...
it was like a real
proper
deal.
Ventriloquist dummy, like a professional one. So it had eyebrows that moved and blinks and eye turns and upper lip, lower lip, ears wiggled, its wig would flap up, So,
oh my gosh.
So I kind of would play around with that. I did have marionette puppets and in fact, a glove puppet show that I created when I was about 8 as well.
Well, I was going to say, so you were interested in puppetry at a young age, and this was because of your sister and this...
Not really. That was almost just a happenstance, but I was interested in puppets way before then. I think my very first puppet was probably trying to make my little teddy bear come to life and talk to me because I was such a lonely, sad child. And so that was one way of making my own friends. So, but I had these little glove puppets and a magic act as well. But there were sort of these large magic props. We got a bunch of stuff from a retired children's entertainer, but I was a bit shy, so I wasn't very good with the patter that magicians usually have, and all these props were kind of like a bit large for me as well. So, but I would sort of have this double act really, where I'd start out with the magic show, and then do this puppet show. So I'd perform it in parks at talent shows. I did a few auditions for a few talent shows on TV as a kid. I was pretty rubbish at both of them. I will say that now. I mean, it was really bad. So I didn't really get anywhere. But I was always interested in puppets. Back in growing up in the 60s and 70s in the UK, puppets were everywhere. I mean, it was, a big thing.
So were they on TV? Yeah, would you go to theater and see them?
There were old TV puppet shows from the 50s that they would rerun, and new current shows, local sort of TV shows and stuff, mostly for kids. But I always loved that. Now, at the same time, I was quite obsessive about cartoons and Disney things, and I would do a lot of drawing and was really interested in animation at the same time. Oh. So...
Did you make little animations like flip books?
All that stuff. And instead of doing work in school, I'd be drawing these things in my school books, little guys walking along tunnels and encountering Frankenstein monsters and all kinds of little trapdoors and stuff. So I'd make up these little stories like sort of an ongoing comic strip as well. So I was always doing everything except what I was supposed to be doing, I think.
Because ultimately that's what you were supposed to be doing.
Because that is what I knew. It is.
You were supposed to be doing it but you just weren't doing it then.
No.
You were doing the wrong thing then, but ultimately,
Exactly.
you know what I mean.
Well, going back a little bit further, I actually wanted to be a clown in the circus. I enjoyed visiting local, circuses that would come to our town and stuff, and thought that was absolutely fascinating. So I considered.
Right.
There was one time in I guess I must have been about 6 or 7, maybe 7, and for some reason the teacher had to leave the classroom in an emergency, and we were all unsupervised. So that was my opportunity to put coloured chalks on my face and become a clown and give a little slapstick routine for the kids of the class, which afforded me some rather hefty slaps on the leg. Because they used to do that back then in those days.
No, that's right. Was it with a ruler or
this was
just
a bare hand?
what did they...
Yes, and a bare leg. So I got in
on the leg.
Yeah, so I got into a lot of trouble for that. But hey, that was like a great audience test there. So clowns, circuses, animation, puppets. You could sort of see where things were going. I did get into trouble. Well, it wasn't really in trouble, but a comment was made to my parents. I think I was about 8, where I spent the entire day in class doing John Cleese's Ministry of Silly Walks up and down the class. And apparently the teacher said she had a hard time trying to not laugh because she didn't want to encourage me. So that was really my sort of school years for the most part. And that's what it was like growing up in Enfield.
How did you learn about Jim Henson or the Muppets?
Yeah, we didn't have quite as much stuff in the UK as you guys did in the States. In the
right with Sesame Street.
We had a little bit though. Yeah, and I was way above the main age for Sesame Street, but we had it on Saturday mornings here. So I used to watch that, of course, 70s. We had a few Muppet specials that were made over here and a few guest appearances, but hardly anything at all. So in 76, how old was I? I was 12, I think. Is that right? Yes, right. Muppet Show started on TV, and it was a big hit in the UK, like right away, much sooner than in the States. And so I very quickly became obsessed with this new thing. It's like, oh my, what is this? What's happening? How are they doing this stuff?
Yeah.
How are they made? And I just couldn't get enough of it. It's the same old story, right? Most of the people you've interviewed have had a similar kind of, obsession.
This attraction, something that draws you in, an inspiration or whatever it was. Like what's happening?
Something that connected, and also it's at the right time as well. I think timing is always really important in these things. So, and it was a good age to become obsessed about something healthy as well, thankfully. So,
it's true. That's
otherwise,
true.
who knows what I would have, who knows? I would have broken into people's houses and peeled off their wallpaper in the middle of the night or something, which apparently is a career now. But, Is
it? Oh,
yeah. I'm sure there's whole YouTube channels on it and stuff. And if not, I'm going to start one. But anyway, so that came along, and I really just loved this whole thing. And I thought, you know what, this is like living cartoons. This is animation and puppetry, and magic, all rolled into one. Yeah, and they kind of look like clowns too. They have the visual.
Everything you loved. Everything you loved.
Into one bundle.
Did you know at that point who was under these characters, creatures, clown-like things? Did you care?
I had no idea, but I did care, and I would, in the TV paper listings that they used to have over here, they would list who the performers were and what characters they did. And I think early on there were some publications that featured behind the scenes, so you'd see a few pictures of the puppeteers, and so you could sort of see who all these weird tall bearded guys were, and like, wow, you got to be tall and bearded and a hippie. Okay, I can do that. So and then I had pocket money, so I would spend my pocket money on foams and furs and fabrics and start constructing half-finished puppets to learn how to construct them. Mostly mistakes and things that would get abandoned partway because I was learning, and that's how we learn.
But there were no patterns.
There weren't.
Or I mean, you were just kind of going off of
pictures,
just your imagination. Did you draw them out yourself first, and
sometimes
then try to replicate
sometimes
that?
I would. I'd just study photographs and try to figure out. Well, it looks like there might be a seam there, but I'm not sure. And we're talking 1976, 77. So there was nothing at that point. The last 2 years of my senior school was 79 and 80, and for those 2 years you could choose specific career subjects. So I wanted to do, art, drama, sewing, or it was called needlework then. And apparently I'd chosen too many creative subjects, and the headmaster said, "No, well, you can't." He was Welsh. She said, "Well, no, you can't. You're not going to become an actor, are you? So we won't let you. We'll cross that off the list." And so he wouldn't let me take drama. So I never took drama in school because I'm not apparently ever going to be an actor. However, we fought so hard to get me. I wanted to take needlework in class so I could make puppets on school time. Mm-hmm. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
so, woodwork and...
obsessed with doing that thing, you want to do it all the time.
Woodwork and metalwork, who needs that? So, no, there hadn't been any other boys in school that had ever taken sewing or needlework before, or cooking for that matter. I think now they call it home economics or something. But then you had cooking and you had sewing or needlework, and the girls took that, and the boys took metalwork and woodwork. It's so different now, but thankfully. Yeah, but they didn't want me to. They wouldn't let me take it at first, and the answer was the teacher had said, "Well, I've never taught a boy before."
What would be different? The instructions are the same. You've got 10 fingers. I
learned how to use a sewing machine. My mother used to sew as well, in fact. So she helped me sort of learn a bit of sewing machine stuff at home as well. She used to make my sister's costumes for the stage and things like that. So I had a bit of a head start with that. But the thing is, you had to make, in that, I think, main year, you had to make a garment of clothing and then an item of your own choice. So, of course, guess how quickly I made that shirt? Oh. I made me a collared shirt. It was rubbish. I remember it was this awful checkered thing, and I never ever wore it. It's like, who cares about the shirt? And then I spent the rest of the year making puppets. And I think by the end of the second year, I was kind of like top of the class, and all my puppets were on display, and the main part of the class on open night and all that kind of thing. So it was quite funny. So that was the puppet making side of things. But meanwhile, going back a few years, I used to listen to a radio show on Saturday afternoon, lunchtimes, I think it was. It was a London radio show on Capital Radio, and it was the Kenny Everett show. And he was quite well known in the UK for being a little bit crazy, and he sort of helped launch people like Queen get Bohemian Rhapsody airplay. He's actually, you can actually see someone playing him in the movie.
In the movie, right?
So someone plays Kenny Everett. So this was the same show. So it was 1977, so I was about 13, and he announced that the following week they were going to have the Muppets live in the studio for his show. So I got on the bus. I had my little kids' TV magazine that had a picture of all the Jim and the puppets on the back, and arrived at the lobby of Capital Radio on a Saturday lunchtime. And in comes Jim, Frank, Jerry, Dave. Was there anyone? That was it, I think. And I met them for the first time. They signed my magazine, which I still have.
That's so cool.
It was very cool. And it's the same day that Louise Gold had her Muppet audition that afternoon. Isn't that crazy? So
it is. So in the morning they went in to do this radio show, and you met them. They signed your magazine. And later that day, they went and found Louise.
You see, stars were beginning to align, weren't they, already? It's very strange, very strange. And then, what was it, about a year later, I think, if that, they announced, of course, the Muppet movie was having its royal world premiere at the Leicester Square Theatre in London. And so I called Lou Grade's office and got 2 tickets with my pocket money.
You just called and said, "Hey, I'm a fan. I'd love to come see the movie."
He didn't answer the phone himself. It was a secretary, though.
Right, of course.
Sadly. However, I bought 2 tickets, and I had to get black tie stuff. I didn't have that. I didn't have black tie outfits and stuff. So I walked the red carpet with my mother at, I guess I was, 13, 14, something like that. And watched the world premiere of the Muppet movie. So, at the end, I saw Spike Milligan, who was there, who'd of course just done a Muppet Show. So he signed my ticket. I worked many, many, many years later with Spike. I directed him on a puppet voice show that we did. So that was kind of nice.
Oh.
But and Richard Hunt, of course, he signed my ticket as well. I didn't see any of the other guys, but
did you talk to Richard at all?
Yeah, just briefly. He just sort of commented, "Oh, I see you got Spike," and usual Richard sort of stuff. So that was that. That was sort of the second encounter.
It's really cool.
But that's what obsessiveness does. It makes things happen that aren't really supposed to happen. If you're that driven,
or maybe they are.
Yeah,
maybe they are supposed to happen. I mean, maybe you are.
Yeah.
Almost willing it to happen because you're putting that energy out there. I wonder if that's part of it.
Well, I think so, because I find I still do it. I haven't really changed. I do by sheer force of will and just desire. I do find I have this ability to make things happen that you think that shouldn't happen. What But it's a kind of a magic in a way, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe we're all magical in some way, and I do think we have a lot of power that we don't tap into and we don't use or are not aware of. We give into quickly. And the people that don't achieve things are the ones that stop trying, right?
Yeah.
I think by believing it enough and wanting it enough, I think it can make things happen that otherwise would not happen, and they can be extraordinary things. People do it all the time, every day, not just us that are, on camera, but behind the scenes and in real life jobs, they make extraordinary things happen. I look at them and I think, how are you doing this stuff? 8-year-old kids raising millions of pounds to help something, some
unbelievable,
hospital machinery or something, so it's amazing.
It's remarkable.
So yeah.
It is that drive that people have, that they have that is they can achieve something and they believe it enough and it happens.
And why not still do that now? It doesn't. I don't think it needs to stop at any age.
I agree. So for you, Mike, you knew what you wanted to do.
At that point,
wanted to, right?
Yes, at that point, it's like, okay, here we are, 1976, 77. I want to do puppets. I'm sure I couldn't do Muppets, but I want to do puppets like that stuff, like they do, and I want to learn. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I was practicing in front of a mirror. We didn't have video cameras or cell phones or anything like that, but we did have mirrors. Yeah. So I set up a mirror in my bedroom, and I would just imitate the techniques and get that muscle memory working and just practice all that stuff for hours on end. Yeah. Sometimes miming to a Muppet. I used to tape all the Muppet shows on audio cassettes so I could play them back and mime to those. Yeah,
because we didn't have ability to record them on video yet. That was not around
right.
yet.
It was only, I think it existed on reel-to-reel high-end stuff. At that point,
couldn't we just normal consumers could not videotape things until mid 80s, mid to late 80s or something. So you did. I remember doing something similar to a show that I'd wanted to see, or I wanted to somehow keep that. And the only way you could do it was if you took your tape recorder and put a cassette tape in, an audio cassette, and record it. And there it was. I did, and that's what you had to remember what it looked like.
So everyone, you got to be quiet. Don't make a sound. I want to, And that was Friday.
No laughter.
Friday night, 7:30, whatever it was, every night. So rather than there were no girlfriends because the Muppet Show was my girlfriend at that age. So I'm sorry, potential ex-girlfriends, but it never happened. Muppets was my first love, which is true. So Muppets are kind of in my DNA a little bit now, because I was at that age. You're still wiring. Your brain is still getting figured out, and your body is also still growing. So I think I did sort of become a little bit hardwired at some point to be a puppet person. So I was obsessing. I was teaching myself. I knew that I wanted to be a puppeteer of some sort. I just didn't think I could be a Muppet performer.
Did you were practicing to a mirror? Is that because you knew that they looked at TV monitors and that's how they
Yes, I'd
worked?
seen a picture of them looking down at a monitor.
Single picture. Yeah. And you put it together, that must be how they do it. Well, that was pretty remarkable for a young man to think, oh, wait, that's what they do. How can I do that?
Yeah.
I guess I'll look in a mirror.
Yeah.
That's just brilliant. That's really
go through the burn, and just get that muscle memory. And every time I did something, it would get that a little bit better. And I'll try and copy styles of what the puppeteers were doing, and I could see that different puppeteers had different emphasis and different ways of doing things. So, and I was learning what each puppeteer did, what their styles were with each character. And
that is some pretty deep observation that only really, maybe people do this, I don't know, but only people, puppeteers, I think, that are really into it know, like, oh, that's definitely Richard, or that's Jim, or that's Frank. Like, we have watched so much and absorbed it that we can see the differences in their manipulation, where I don't know that if just the casual viewer would pick that
maybe
up.
The voices more so. That might be a little easier for people to recognize, because essentially we can only go so far with our voices. Although, with that said, it took me a long time to figure out who was doing everyone. But or if there's a new character comes along, you're like, hey, who is that? Who is that? So, and that still happens now, like Peter will come up with something and I'll be like, who is that? Is that Peter?
Who is that?
What? Which is great.
Yeah.
But puppetry styles, definitely, each of the core Muppet performers all had a very specific, unique, wonderful, amazing style.
Were you drawn to anyone in particular, any particular performer's style?
At that point, I wasn't, but I could recognize how... like, for example, that Jim was quite free and playful with his stuff, and that Frank was much more controlled and technical, and Dave was a lot more sort of efficient and minimalist in many ways, and that Jerry was a lot more soulful, and that Richard was just out there like that. So I could sort of recognize those core styles, if I were to label them in that way. But at that point, I didn't know that one, I wasn't drawn necessarily to one above the other. I just wanted to see those, I just wanted a Muppet on my hand and watch that magic happen with with those eyes and that mouth,
So what did you do? How did you start to make this dream come to life?
So I made puppets. I finished the puppets. I practiced with my bare hand. I practiced with puppets. I remember, I don't know why, but a local newspaper came around and took pictures of these puppets all sat around me out in the backyard, and that was in the local newspaper. But just after that, so this would be beginning of 1980. It was my last year of school, last 6 months of school. And my dad was working for a company that provided entertainment for clubs and companies and businesses, for the evening. Like a lot of businesses would have a club or a bar, and people would then spend that, like a Friday night or whatever, at that club, that business club, company club. And on this particular occasion, it happened to be ATV at Boreham Wood. So my dad got to know the accountant for the Muppet Show, I guess, and for ATV, and suddenly I had a pass to go see a taping of a Muppet Show, which was Linda Carter.
Wow, it's Wonder Woman,
of course. It was great. So, because I was just beside myself with excitement, and I remember I'd made an applique Dr. Teeth T-shirt that was like made out of felt and all embroidered and stuff, and I'd made it with Velcro so I could take it off and wash the shirt and stick it back on again.
Pretty smart.
Well, I guess. So the way it used to work on a Muppet Show, it was in Studio D, which was their sort of variety show studio, and they'd have this sort of small amount of raked seating when they'd have a live studio audience. But of course, when they did Muppet Show, they never had a live audience, of course. But the guests were usually shot, I think, on a Wednesday. I think they always did them entirely in one day on a Wednesday. So that was the day I would always go along, and there'd just be like 1, 2, 3, 4 people sitting up there just hanging out for an hour or two, and then they'd leave, and I'd be like right at the front the whole day taking it all in. So I got remember I got called down onto the studio floor at one point, and they were talking about my shirt, and I was just like, oh, Muppet people, oh, this is the Muppet Show set, backstage set, Stalin Waller. And afterwards, I'd heard that Linda Carter had said something to me about, I guess, my shirt, and I just completely blew her off because, like, you're not Muppets. I didn't hear her. I don't know. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So I blew off Linda Carter. So sorry, Linda. I owe you one.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So this became a regular thing. And because it was the last year of school, they would allow you to have you could
like an internship,
kind of like that. So instead of doing everything over a period of a week or 2 or 3 weeks, I just grabbed the odd day here and there and visit Muppet Show, and they would let me do that. In fact, the school was glad for me to not be around. In fact, like I remember the careers interview I had at school was like. They're like, okay, there's nothing we can do for you. Just keep doing what you're doing. Thanks, bye. There's the door. So they were quite happy for me to do this, and so I would go along about every other week and watch the guest stars tape their shows. Diana Ross and Linda Ronstadt. The very last one, of course, which was Gene Kelly. And so they got to know me there, of course, and each time I went along, I'd try and find some excuse to connect and interact with them all.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So one day I brought along my tape recorder and a microphone and got recorded verbal autographs from down in the workshop. The Muppet Workshop was right next to the studio. So that was another good way of... but people like Jerry Nelson, for example, were always just so... They weren't like, go away, kid, you bother me. It was quite the opposite. They were always just so friendly and welcoming and nice, and the puppet makers too. So I got a bunch of verbal autographs from them that day. Another day I brought along, I had some Muppet scrapbooks I was putting together, and they signed a page in there. And then there are a few times I brought my bags full of puppets along to show them. And Richard Hunt and Jim Henson would put these puppets on and work them.
And was your brain just melting out of your ears?
It was.
Could you believe that they had your puppets on their hand?
Yes and no. I mean, it's like...
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And this, taking moments out of their busy production schedule to give me 5 or 10 minutes here and there sometimes. And I remember one of the... whether it was Rolly or Jan or I don't remember who, but somebody said, would you like to try on an actual Muppet? Which one would you like to try? And of course, right there was Kermit, so I put Kermit on, and he was the first Muppet I think I actually tried on, which is, crazy. So they got to know me anyhow, and I learned more about how they were shooting, basically, how they did things, just watching them week after week after week. I would sort of offer bribes to the accountant to get in each time. So I would actually bring... So I was 15. I was 15. And I would literally bring him, chocolates and cigarettes, because everyone smoked back then, apparently. I don't know. Right. So as a 15-year-old, I would bring cigarettes to the accountant so he would let me into the studio, and he took them as well. He didn't say, "Oh no, don't do that, it's fine."
I'll take those, thank you very much.
I heard many years later, whether it was him or another one, I guess allegedly anyway, there was an accountant at ATV that went to prison for embezzlement.
Oh.
So it may or may not have been...
Maybe. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, I may or may not have had something to do with that. Or anyway, maybe I set him down a bad path. But
maybe.
So that was sort of, like an acceleration of my Muppet journey, I suppose, and my puppet journey.
Okay, we will be back with Mike Quinn in just a few minutes. But first, that'll be...
It's fake ad time. Woo! Run it!
And then they were all soggy and floppy like. What are you gonna do?
And cut. Loved it. Let's watch it on playback. Whoa. Why is the audio so terrible?
Well, the puppeteer is reaching through 2 haystacks, but they need to look over their shoulder to see the monitor.
Let's get a microphone in those haystacks.
Yeah, but then the puppeteer is climbing down a ladder and passing under that tree branch and... shimming into that wooden box full of fake farm equipment.
Right, so ask the puppeteer to speak more clearly. Okay, we're going again, and action.
Let me paint a picture for you. You're a puppet. You got arms,
And
really
cut. All right, let's listen back. What is with this sound? Does the puppeteer shove half an almond croissant in their mouth each time I say action? How come I can't get clean audio on this?
Wait a minute. What if we mic the puppeteer directly? They can wear a headband, and then we can clip on a lavalier.
Lava what?
Lavalier.
There's lava here.
Lavalier.
Floor is lava, everyone. Quick, somebody save that tiny dog.
A lavalier. It's a small wireless microphone. We can clip it to a headband. Then, any direction the puppeteer turns their head, the mic will travel with them.
What are you, a headband salesman?
No.
Your cousin work for the Elastic Sports Gear Council?
Not anymore.
Is your father a head sweat lobbyist?
Never.
Is your sister a power forward in the WNBA?
She sells paint.
Well, I think it's a great idea. Do we have room in the budget for a headband?
I'll skip lunch.
No, I'm the boss. I get the big bucks, so I'll donate my afternoon coffee budget to buy a headband for our sad puppeteer with the tiny mouth.
Awesome.
And I'll even get an extra headband for the dog in case she has any lines. He's so cute. Tiny little puppy headband. Are you a good featured extra? Yeah? Are you? I mean, you were so brave when the floor was lava. Yes, you were. You were so brave.
So we're losing daylight?
Right, you are. Okay, people, back to it.
Let's roll.
Hey, now, it's my job to say let's roll.
Oh, right.
Let's continue to roll.
Puppeteers, your job is physical and demands you perform your characters in all kinds of outrageous and unnatural positions. It's time you turn your audio from zero to hero with a headband. Show up to set with a headband or a hat, and your production sound mixer will love you forever.
I just put my microphone back to where it goes. That is right. Today's episode of Below the Frame is brought to you by Headbands. Yeah, I know. You know, if you look at those old pictures of the Muppet performers, you see them wearing these huge headbands with the foam windscreens hanging off them, shaped like Kermit or something, and that's the microphone. We don't really have mics like that nowadays. I mean, it's mostly like a sweatband that the mic is, you know, the cable's laced through and onto the microphone that's right in the middle of our forehead, usually. Some people, like Marty Robinson, they still have a little extended arm on their headband that the mic's attached to, so it's closer to his mouth. And I'm not sure why it needs to be so close to his mouth. Marty's very loud, especially when performing telly. Actually, he's got the mic attached to the little metal arm near his mouth because when he puts telly up, and telly's kind of a baggy puppet, and so it hangs down over Marty's head a little bit, and then there's a potential that the mic, the puppet, could rub up against the mic. Other performers wear just hats, and the mic is clipped there to that. It's kind of a personal preference, I guess. In Big Bird, the microphone isn't on the headband either. It's on the harness that the monitor is seated in. It's right there on my right side, right there, you know, so they can, you know, you can hear the sound from inside Big Bird. So puppeteers, because we perform not only the movements of the puppet, but we also do the voice, we have to be mic'd so we can get the sound off the floor. We don't like to lip sync to pre-recorded tracks. Some shows, they do that, like Crank Yankers, but you know, it's just different than how we do it. So there you go, Jack. What do you think? Wait, Jack. He took off. Okay. Well, he didn't hear any of that, but doesn't matter. Hopefully you will find some, little bit in that for you and your puppetry. I would like to thank Headbands for being a sponsor of Below the Frame. Now back to the show. We are back with Mike Quinn.
And then I left school at the earliest legal opportunity, which was in the summer of 1980. You had the option at that point of stay. It's 2 years earlier in the UK, I think, than it is in the States for some reason. But anyway, you have the option of either staying on another 2 years or not. So My option was not.
You chose not.
Not.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to be a puppeteer, and I'm going to figure something out, or I'll get a job and figure it out, in the meantime.
What'd you do?
Well, at the same time that I finished school, I turned 16 just after that. So technically I'd left school at 15, basically, but I would have been 16 by the time the school year would have returned. So yeah, it's a bit Dickensian, isn't it, really, when you think about it?
It's so young.
So
to go out into the world and try to make life for yourself?
Yeah,
I mean, you were still living at home,
yes? I was, yes.
But still, there's a lot now on your hands. You got to start to make something for yourself.
But I had to figure something out for sure, earn my keep, that was kind of expected, really, to be honest. So if I didn't figure something out, it's like, you better get a job and pay some bills around here. So Muppet Show finished at the same time pretty well that summer of 80 as I finished school. And, of course, they immediately went across the street to the film studio to make the Great Muppet Caper. I didn't know a whole lot of what was going on, but somebody probably at ATV told me where they'd gone. So guess what I did?
You went across the street.
Yeah. And I made friends with a security guy there. And he said, "Oh yeah, Governor, they're not here today. They're on location at Addenham Village in Hertfordshire. They're there." So I then set about getting a series of buses to go into London. So I at Victoria Station, I think it was, in London. So I could get another series of coaches that took me back out to Hertfordshire.
How far away is that?
Well, from Elstree, it's probably only like a half-hour drive or something. But it took me I got there about 4 in the afternoon, I think, something like that, because it took forever. But I figured it out.
Yeah.
And it was this little village, and they were shooting where they land in the duck pond with Robert Morley. That where they fall from the plane. Yeah. So I showed up and watched them shoot the last couple of hours of that. And I also with me had a little envelope, well, rather a large brown manila envelope that had a letter in it to Jim Henson saying, "Please give me a job." And in it I had pictures of puppets that I'd made, and that same newspaper article that I referenced earlier was in there as well. And so I thought, I'm going to give this to Jim and ask him for a job now, because I left school. That's what you do. You just go to Jim Henson or Lou Grade or somebody,
you go wherever. Go where you want.
It's like if you want to be in politics, you go to the president of the United States of America to for a job application, right?
To sign up.
Yeah, that's what you do. So that's what I did. However, it was so it was the end of the day. Everyone was packing up and going home. It was Jim Henson's 44th birthday that day. And so people were giving him birthday cards and stuff like that. And then I gave him my envelope, and he was like, "Oh, thank you very much," because he thought it was a birthday card.
Birthday.
So he didn't open it there and then. And I walked back to my little bus stop, and as I watched all the big limos drive by to go back to base, I'm sure they all looked at me and thought, "Oh, poor kid, bless." I went back. I got home about 10:30 at night.
Oh my gosh. But you had delivered to Jim this letter.
I'd had a great day. I took some photographs. It was amazing. So I was happy as anything. And then about 2 weeks later, a phone call came from David Laser, the exec producer, saying, do you want to do a week on Muppets as a background puppeteer? So I had to think about it for a while. So let me check my diary. Let me get back to you on this.
I'll get back to you.
Let me see. I don't know. Should I? Is it really a good career move? I'm not sure. Maybe not. No, I don't know. No. So of course. So anyway, about a week or two later, I was hired basically as kind of a. I think they took me in under the extras union initially. I think just to get me in there for the first week. And there I was. First night, they were doing night shoots that week. There was still technically location. So the very first thing I ever did was when the Happiness Hotel bus arrives at the Dubonnet Club, and it stops. And I was working Swedish Chef out of the bus window. And it's actually the front of the Elstree Studios redressed. Which is not there anymore, sadly. Cool. But so that part of it's gone. But that was the admin building out front where it actually arrives at. So that was my very first night. Second nights, they were shooting London shots, where they're singing, they're doing the the driving the Happiness Hotel bus around London, and Beauregard is driving around with Kermit and Gonzo in the back. So I was in the little yellow taxi that Beauregard was driving. The stunt driver was wearing a Beauregard outfit in front, driving, and I was literally in the back working Kermit and Gonzo. And you see that shot; it drives past Harrods in the film, and that you see Kermit. And that's me. That was my second night.
Oh,
Two
wow.
puppets, and they were driving around and around the block in rush hour. Can you imagine, like, looking over in a car and saying, "Hey, there's a frog and a whatever in the back of that car." You know, it's one of those things. Can you imagine that though? How crazy! And then the rest of the week was the exteriors at Nebworth House, the Mallory Gallery, where they were trying to break in and all that kind of stuff, and climbing up the
climbing up the drain pipe,
which most of it, of course, that was studio created, but all the other parts, in the very end as well, where Nikki gets captured by the cops with Diana Rigg and everything. So that was my first week.
Not a bad week.
And as an extra, then you would then get paid in cash at the end of the week. And they gave me my first envelope of cash, and it's like, man, I'm hungry. I could really use some fish and chips. Because that's what you do when you're in England. Yeah. So I bought myself some fish and chips to eat on the bus.
Little mashed peas?
No peas, I think. I think it was just fish and chips with vinegar, and I ate those on the bus on the way home. That was what I bought with my first Muppet wages.
Wow.
And that's how it started.
Wow. Oh my gosh, Mike, that's what an amazing journey just to get to that first week on Great Muppet Caper. And it seemed like everything that you experienced along the way was telling you, whether it was actions you were taking or whether you just happenstance, it was saying like, this is what you need to be doing. Go this way. It seemed like it was driving you that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's so strange. I mean, when I found out, first of all, where Muppet Show was being taped, because we all thought it was made in the States, of course, because it was such an American show. And then it's like, it's half an hour from where I live. It's one bus ride. I could literally get a bus from the end of my street that would drop me off outside the studio in about 30 minutes for like 50p, I think it was. I mean, that's crazy. How does that even happen?
I know. Yeah. I mean, you would think like for people that live in Hollywood,
right.
It's just right there. It's down the street from where people live. But you're
just
in the UK,
normal,
and if you think that this show, it's right there.
Nothing special about us. And it was right there, which was rather convenient. So, and then the other thing that happened at the same time, because Bobby Payne, who Bobby Payne is, he was one of the original builders for Sam and Friends. He went to school with Jim, I think, he was on Sesame Street, of course, I think, and built a lot of the early Muppets. So he was in the workshop of Muppet Show in the last year when I was bringing puppets in. And he remembered that. And, of course, he was doing some puppetry on the Great Muppet Caper as well in crowd scenes and stuff. And he needed someone to help him build the podlings and slaves for Dark Crystal.
Now we're moving on to this
and so when he found out
different
that
thing.
I was around and was now being employed by Henson, he's like, "Oh, can I have Mike to help construct some of these heads and limbs and bodies?" And it turned out there were about 100 of them in total, 50 podlings and 50 slaves.
How long did you have to build those? How much time?
I think it was several months, I think. I want to say 3 months. I'm not quite sure exactly. So because it was a 2-picture deal that Jim wanted to make The Dark Crystal and Lou Grade wanted to make another Muppet film because he'd lost so much money on Raise the Titanic. So they basically said, well, let's make each other's movie and make it a 2-picture deal. So that's kind of how it happened. So we had the same crew, essentially, back to back on both films.
You went right from Great Muppet Caper into Dark Crystal?
Yeah, on the same studio, same DP, pretty well the same crew, same ADs. It was almost just like, the same film almost. But so often at the end of the Great Muppet Caper, we'd be doing film tests for Dark Crystal. So it was made for great dailies and rushes the next day because you'd go through all this Muppet stuff and then you see all these early Jen and Kira tests and creature lighting tests, makeup tests, and all kind of environmental stuff. It was amazing. So the days that I wasn't filming on the Great Muppet Caper, I'd be at the Hampstead workshop with Bobby Payne. And Faz Fazakas and Amy and all those guys working on building these podlings. So
what an amazing, I mean, such a fertile time for the
It was
company.
amazing. I mean,
things were just growing and happening.
And I definitely say that I learned so much in that first 2 years between Muppet Caper, Dark Crystal, and then Return of the Jedi. All the things I'd learned, I'm still using now. You know, that was like my foundation. And I don't think there would have been any other time where I could have learned as much in so many aspects of film puppetry, basically, and TV puppetry. There was a lot, you know, going from learning Muppet stuff to then learning animatronics and realistic, you know, how to make these things walk in a real way and stuff like that. And then I ended up working a Skeksis. I think Kathy Mullen, I think, was going to be working one originally, and I think Kevin Clash was going to be coming over to work one, but there were visa issues or he was busy with Space Coaster or something, and Kathy decided that she had enough on her plate with Kira and didn't want to do a Skeksis. So
understandably. So you ended up doing the Skeksis.
At 16, I had my
Mike,
17th birthday on the Crystal Chamber set of the Dark Crystal. Yes.
Wow, that's so cool. Well, I did, while we're here talking about Dark Crystal, I want to play something for you. Somebody sent along a message.
I first met Mike Quinn about 40 years ago when we were working on Dark Crystal. Mike was building podlings with Bobby Payne, and he would often pop by and see Lyle Conway and I as we were sculpting the various characters. But when Jim cast Mike as the role of the Slave Master Skeksis, we got to see him a lot more often. He came by for fittings, make sure his hand would fit into all the grips that we were building for the Skeksis. We discovered we grew up in the same part of London, just a few miles apart, but had never met until we worked for Jim. Throughout Dark Crystal, our friendship grew, and we had a great time working on that film. And in fact, a little while after, both Mike and I worked on Yoda for Frank on Return of the Jedi. When my son had his first birthday party, we invited Mike along. He brought a lovely present, a white cardboard jewellery box wrapped with a ribbon. So we undid the ribbon, looked inside, and there was a single-use twin-blade shaving stick. He said, "Don't worry, he'll grow into it." That's one of the things I love about Mike is his sense of humour. He's really knowledgeable about classic British comedians and musical acts, and one of his favourites is Laurel and Hardy. And I think this knowledge and this history of comedy is one of the things that make his puppeteering and his performances so strong.
That was Dave Barclay.
Never heard of him.
Sending along a message.
Who
Never
is
heard
that?
of him?
No. Good old Dave, yeah. So, yeah, we had a company together for years afterwards as well, making puppets and reinventing things a little bit and trying new stuff. And people would tell us we couldn't do it and we were crazy, but we did it anyway to prove them wrong. Red flag to a bull. You can't do that. Yes, we can. So, yeah, good old Dave, yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, he wanted to send along that hello to you.
Great, thank
you. Yeah. So, was there anything before we go to a little film franchise called Star Wars? Was there anything else about Dark Crystal that you wanted to mention? Maybe a memory that you had of filming something, maybe as a Skeksis or something like that?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few actually. I do remember one time I was assisting Kira. I think I was doing one of her arms or something with Melissa and Kathy. And it was this sort of wide shot where the camera pans down from a bird in the tree and you see the gelflings laying there the next morning, full length, puppeteering them through holes in the floor. And I remember Kathy saying, "Jim, why is this so hard?" And Jim just kind of looked at her and said, "If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it."
Yeah.
I remember it so well. There was another time where we were in the Crystal Chamber, and we'd be in the Skeksis for quite a long time, and they'd close us in, and then in between scenes, you could sort of unvelcro the side and sort of pop your head out for air, while you were still strapped into this thing with your arm above your head. And, Jim and Frank were both, of course, co-directing the movie. And I remember Jim turning the corner and he just burst out laughing in the way that Jim would have that little chuckle that he had. And he said, "Michael, he couldn't reconcile the fact that there was this evil Skeksis with a hook and a eye patch and sleds and stother and all kinds of stuff like that. And then they'd be like little me looking out the side, grinning, like all happy as anything. Like, oh, I'm doing a Skeksis. And he just thought it was the funniest thing ever. He was like that, though. Jim was great. Jim was always just very, very playful and... any opportunity to play with a puppet, he would always be there. I think he was just so happy when he didn't have to be a businessman and he could just put a puppet on his arm and just have a laugh and a play and a sing. And he was always very free with his performing. I'd noticed that even with Kermit too, and with other characters. Like I remember the dog in the Tale of the Bunny Picnic. He just loved doing that thing. He loved dog puppets, it seems, and he would just get so happy. So Dark Crystal, it was just such an amazing, magical, tough, but creative, so creative. It was the first animatronic film ever, so we had to rehearse for quite a few months to figure out how do we make a Skeksis walk, and how do you work an animatronic face, what is realistic and what isn't, that kind of thing. How do you blink these things, when and why, and the scale of everything and all that. And I made mistakes on film. The stuff's up there to see. Had another 6 months, I might have got it figured out. But we.
But you were all learning. It seems like everybody was trying to figure this out,
I suppose.
Right?
I mean, I wasn't as far along as the main guys like Steve and everybody, and Dave, and they all sort of had a lot more under their belts. So they had a lot more tools to use, and they'd done a lot more film as well. Back then, of course, we didn't have the digital cameras or monitors. So when the film turned over, the shutter would roll, and you'd get this really flickery, grainy image. You could hardly see what you were doing.
Yeah, I don't know how that... I mean, they did that for so many movies.
You just couldn't see what you were doing. It was hideous. You just sort of had to look through this weird flicker and hope that it was
just like always moving. I remember that I think we did that on Adventures of Elmo and Grouchland. That was shot on film.
Okay.
And I remember it was just like, you could not.
Yeah. Was it still in black and white at that point? I think we all had black and white monitors.
It was color at this point. But even having it then be black and white, I mean, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and of course, the monitors, like in this, with the Skeksis would have this, was it 6-inch, the black and white tube monitors, which would get very hot, and they were slung around your neck with a cable going out as well. But let's have more cables, Which I guess Carol Spinney had something like that, but his was wireless or. Yeah,
it was wireless. Yeah, it was wireless, and it was a tube TV, and it was very long and got very hot.
So it'd be about the same kind of device then that he wore for all those years. But it was an amazing time, and I'm so grateful. I really am for everything that I learned and how nice everyone was to me. Richard Hunt would always look out for me as well, making sure he even tried to make sure I was being paid enough at one point on Dark Crystal. And he went to one of the producer guys and said, "Mike's not being paid enough," and then I got a pay bump after that. And he was right, I mean, amazing.
I've heard such great stories about Richard and how he really did look out for other people, and he was very generous and just a kind person.
He did. We'd always have these meals at the end of a week or during a week or whatever, somewhere in London or a Chinese restaurant or something. And, it'd be like 12 of us all sat around this big long table. And, at some point during the meal, we wouldn't notice, but he'd slipped off to pay the entire bill for everybody, on a regular basis. That was Richard. That was how he lived his life, and that's how he enjoyed every moment that was given. And, he was a very giving person, and he enjoyed life.
And Jim, you're working with Jim Henson. This, must be a huge inspiration to you. Was there a moment that you remember, other than him laughing at you, poking your head out of the Skeksis? Was there another moment that you remember Jim, when you're thinking about him, now that he's been gone for so long, that you return to a lot?
There are so many. But I remember him, as I said before, just being so playful and encouraging us to play. There was one time we were doing And I always remember this. We were doing Muppet Home Videos. Something like that. So it was, again, early 80s.
Someone will tell us.
Yeah, someone will tell us. About 82 or 83 or something like that, I think. But, Jim would, I don't know why, but Jim would he always brought me in to do like hands for Kermit or something, or for Ralph and that kind of thing. So that was always really nice. But I was brought in as an assistant for these things. And this particular episode was Kermit and Fozzie were in the attic going through old Muppet Show props. Oh, remember this thing? It reminds me of when we did that thing on the show. And then they'd go into a clip, Yeah. But Jerry Jewell was there, of course, writing stuff on the fly as they used to do back then. They'd just pretty well write the thing on the spot. And then after 5 minutes, they'd have it figured out and they'd go into it. But I remember it was just Jim and Frank doing Kermit and Fozzie in this attic. And it was, the small crew, just a couple of camera guys, a lighting guy, and I think probably Amy Van Gilde doing puppet rigging or something, and stuff like that. It was hardly anybody on the shoot. But they just got into this moment where they started cracking each other up like little children, and tears were rolling down their cheeks. They were just having the best time ever, and I always remember that. It's like that's what puppets are about. This is why we do what we do. It's for ourselves as much as it is for for anybody else. And there's a reminder that corny as it sounds, it teaches me that this is all about the journey, the destination we can't control, but we need to make sure that each day we are getting the most out of it and enjoying that every breath that we have and the people that are around us. And I think Jim did like to enjoy life. He took me to see Bratsov, the Russian puppeteer. He was like the big main guy then. This was in the early 80s, and introduced me to, this is Michael, he's one of our puppeteers. And, he'd just do stuff like that, just because he loved to enjoy and share what other people were doing, and share what he had with others. He was a very generous man, for sure. There are so many things. I just remember him just certainly being very encouraging, very excited about new stuff. He was always so far ahead. I remember Dark Crystal hearing about Jim wanting to do a show where puppeteered CG characters. And so we're talking about 1980, 81 there. And it's like, wait, what are you talking about? This isn't even possible yet. And it wasn't possible yet. But sure enough, it wasn't for 6 years later, he was doing Waldo. Yeah, he was doing Waldo. Right? It wasn't necessarily quite real time. I mean, the wireframe thing was, but nevertheless, there it was.
So in 1982, you did this little tiny movie called Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. I was still 17 at that point.
It's unbelievable.
It was so weird because I never auditioned for anything yet, and I think all I had was I was called into Robert Watts, the producer's office at Elstree, for 10 minutes and had a little chat with him, and that was it, really. I don't even know what we talked about, but something about Henson and Lucas being buddies with each other, and there might be some puppets for you to work on this thing, and great, and that was it, really. So beginning of January 82, I was brought in as a puppeteer, just generic puppeteer. I didn't really know what I was going to be working. So started out assisting Tim Rose with Admiral Akbar on cable controls, and Cy Snoodles, the singer, who was replaced with CG years later, of course.
Yes.
But so we worked on that.
With Admiral Akbar and the cable controls, what were the cables doing? The eyes, the mouth? What were you?
Yeah, there were two versions of
doing?
that. So the close-up version was just head and shoulders, and Tim Rose was working that as a hand puppet, and I was working the eye turns and blinks on cable controls. Then there was a wide shot where Tim was wearing the suit, and the eyes didn't move, but I was working the mouth on cable control. So when you see it wide, then it's just the mouth on cable. So I was just miming to Tim, acting away inside, saying his stuff.
Yeah.
So Jabba's Palace was the first thing we shot. So Snoodles we shot on first, the singer, and then Phil Tippett gave me the close up. He was called Reese, but he was a 3-eyed camel-looking thing, And there was a close-up hand puppet version of that as well, which I operated. And you see him in the alcoves, and he throws the camera as they pan across and that kind of thing. So that was the first thing. But then, and then I think I helped. I remember coming in and doing a close-up on Jabba's tail. It was they'd made a beanbag tail. They wanted a close-up of his tail, like being strangled or something, and the regular one was...
I remember that shot.
Yeah, the regular one was mechanical, so it couldn't really shake like that. It was on a crankshaft, and it was attached to Jabba the Hutt. But they'd built this special polystyrene bead tail that they wanted it close up of it shaking as he's being strangled. So I came in and did that. I remember I was inside Jabba's butt when he was being strangled, working his eye bulges, and it was all cracking and falling apart, and batteries were showering down on my head. I remember that.
Oh, God.
As Carrie was on top strangling him with the chain, like, oh, no, this thing's he's really going to die. We're all going to die with him.
Actually.
And all the fiberglass was snapping and cracking. Yeah, it was amazing.
There was probably just the one character, wasn't there?
There were no substitutes or anything like that. So we did things like that. And then what else happened? I had some baby Ewoks as well, because they wanted a little hand puppet Ewok baby thing, so I got to do that. So that was quite nice. And then Frank, I guess because I'd assisted him with Fozzie and Piggy and stuff like that, he wanted me to help to take over Kathy Mullen's job as the right hand for Yoda. So as you heard from Mr. Barclay earlier, so I got to do that, which was amazing. Being a big, huge fan of Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, I was obsessing about that a lot before I was working with Muppets. So that would be, 79 or something like that, while I was still at school. So I was a big, huge fan of Yoda and Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. And did you, and I'm guessing you had already put this together, that it was Frank, the same Frank
at that point,
that was on the Muppet Show.
Yeah, because there was enough at that point out there for me to know that stuff. But it's like, how is this Yoda thing going to even move? It's not a Muppet. How are they doing that? What is this? Because that was really the very first thing like that ever. I mean, way before E.T.
And it has this very different looking creature that doesn't look Muppety at all.
People at the time thought that was a guy's real eyes in there. They didn't always understand it was a hand puppet. But Frank is just so. I don't know if anyone else could have done that at that time other than Frank. Pulled it off. I really, and the thing is, Frank's so meticulous, and we rehearsed. I remember going into Jedi. He sat us all down, and we watched all the footage from Empire Strikes Back. He wanted us to watch that first in a little screening room. Yeah, and he was very critical of his own performance, and I got to do better, guys, than this. And his eyebrows were going up and down at the same time, and it's not supposed to. And he wasn't happy. So we rehearsed for he didn't have as much to do in Jedi as Empire. But we rehearsed for several days, and we worked out every beat, every movement, all the timings, exactly when everything happened. Because that was Frank. He approached his performance as very, very much an actor would approach their character. I thought that was really interesting. He didn't just sort of let us all fly by the seat of the pants. We knew when the head turns were going to be, and when the breaths were, and when he was going to look down, and when he was going to do this, sit on the bed, and when he's going to pull the covers over him, and what looks he was going to have. Everything was planned out and mapped out, and we got that figured out so that when we went on set, we could reproduce it from any camera angle.
Now, was this different because you had worked with him with Fozzie? Was it different in how he did his Fozzie Bear puppetry? Was that a little bit more free and seat of your pants?
Yeah, much more so. I mean, I think whenever this is my memory of it anyway. He seemed to need or require more takes with Miss Piggy than Fozzie on Great Muppet Caper. I remember we got up to 100 and then they started over at 1 again. Because he wanted it to be right, and and of course he did some amazing work on that film too. So I think with Fozzie he was probably less. I think maybe Piggy was just harder in many ways, for him. Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, they are these characters.
Yeah, I know I mean, I know it is it is a little unwieldy, just like the character.
Just like the character. And
for Piggy herself.
And for him, it's about hitting just that right tone, that right emotion, those acting beats, the timings of everything. he was always approaching the things as a character, and he directs his humans the same way, I think, too. He's no harder on himself than he is on his actors, I think. And going back and watching Little Shop of Horrors now with all this distance, I'm just amazed at, like, wait a minute, this is really good. How the hell did he do this? This is amazing. Frank, he's a great talent. And it was nice to run into him again a few years back on, was it the Last Jedi premiere, I think it was, and we talked a lot about the old days and stuff. And I thanked Frank, for what he had passed along to me and helped me with over the years, and with by example and inspiration, and working alongside him. And he just deflected it all. He just said, "Nope, it's all Jim. It's all Jim." He wouldn't accept any responsibility for what he had for his contribution,
what he had actually done
for all of us. Seriously, So I like the new Frank.
Okay, stepping away from my talk with Mike Quinn to ask a puppeteer about not puppets.
Ask a puppeteer about not puppets.
On today's Ask a Puppeteer About Not Puppets, we are going to ask Bill Barretta a question about not puppets. Bill, do you remember your first date?
I'd say my first date was I was 13 and I went to a dance, and that was like our date.
Did you dance?
Oh yeah,
you did. I can't get my
dancing.
kids to go to a dance and dance. They just go to a dance and they just sit there.
Oh, it was the best.
You got to dance.
It was Saturday Night Fever time.
Yeah.
It was the 70s, it was great rock and roll. Always and forever. You'd wait for that slow dance at the end. At the end of the dance, every weekend. Each moment with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love to dance. Yeah.
Right.
Ask a puppeteer about not puppets.
Let's get back into it with Mike Quinn. You also played a character in Return of the Jedi.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Tell us about this character that you played.
This character that I played in Return of the Jedi. Well, let me see now. It was a very, very long time ago. But again, it was really just me sort of putting myself up there, I think. He existed as just a background alien. He was a mask that an extra wore, didn't have any articulation on the face at all, just a rubber mask. And that was it. And about halfway through the film, George Lucas, I guess, wanted a co-pilot for Lando because he knew he needed one, and he just liked the look of this guy. He looks great, and so he picked him out. And I used to hang around a lot in the creature shop at Elstree, which Phil Tippett was heading up. So instead of going home, I just sort of play with all their various creatures and puppets.
Just hang out.
And Phil, I guess, would just be, whatever. So as he's repairing and gluing and finishing up puppet bits and things with his team. And came across this 9-num mask sitting there. And there were two of them, I guess a spare, And I kind of really liked the look of him. And he was saying, oh, yeah, George has just chosen him to be in the scenes in a couple of weeks in the Falcon, and he has dialogue and he doesn't have any mouth movement, and we don't know what we're going to do. And he said, oh no, maybe we'll put an oxygen mask over his face because his mouth doesn't move, and we'll put bladders in his cheeks to make to make it look like he's talking or something. And I was like, really? This isn't. So I picked up the mask and put my hand inside, and I said, look, you can actually make the mouth talk if you turn it into a hand puppet. He was like, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. I like that. So then he said, well, do you think you could fit it out and finish that up and puppetize it, and then we can show it to George in a week or so? So that's what I did. I got some bits of foam from his shop and glued in a mouth plate inside and put in a brain, in there, and I think there was probably some shoulder section or something that I stole or whatever, fake shoulders or whatever. So sort of made a rough puppet out of one of these masks. And then we did a film test that George Lucas directed. I think it was on stage 8, I want to say, at Elstree.
And you were puppeteering.
So basically, they had the extra in one mask stood there, and next to him was me with the hand puppet, puppeteering him. And so George wanted to see them next to each other and compare them, one-on-one. And so he would tell us to, look around and say stuff and react in different ways and just take us through the moves, I guess. And then I said, well, you could put in some eye blinks, some mechanical eye blinks in there. And then I actually put my hand behind his ear and said, he can wiggle his ears too, because he had these great big ears, which I loved. And of course, Stan Laurel used to do that as well, So I wanted to bring a bit of that into him. And Stuart Ziff, I think that it was one of the coordinators. He basically, George asked, can you do that? Can you add that stuff? And Stuart sort of agreed, yes, I guess we can. And off he went back to California with this head to mechanize it, which Kirk Thatcher worked on. Interesting, because Kirk was at the Creature Shop.
I knew he worked on.
He was there at that. We hadn't met. He didn't come over to London at that time. So, but Kirk, did some early, I think some video tests or something of the finished puppet before it was sent back to London. And then so anyway, about 2 weeks later. So this would be about May, I think, April or May of '82. We had a day or two to shoot on the Millennium Falcon, and somehow I was puppeteering it, I guess, because I don't know, because I was there. I don't know.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as all these other stories, Mike. You are where you need to be at that particular time, whether it is saying, look, it's a puppet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I make my own opportunities for sure. That, yes.
You did, yeah. You have to. I think there's a part you
there's
do have to do that.
There's a lesson to be learned, I think, for others too in this, Put yourself in the front.
I think so.
And don't be shy, and don't be self-defeating, right? Mm-hmm. We can do that sometimes. Yeah. So I showed up on set, and I had my sides, my script, and there was no dialogue written for him, because it just said 9 num chatters. And oh, by the way, he was called 9 num because originally he was just number 9 on the creature list, and he didn't have a name. I actually have that sheet somewhere. Yeah.
Really?
And he was like, squid head,
number 9.
yak face, number 9, and
number 9.
So they changed it to 9 num.
9 num.
So anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I
no, that's pretty here. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's where they came up with the name.
It's so difficult for these people, isn't it?
It's 9 num, just call it 9.
The script just said 9 num chatters a liquid alien language or something like that. And then you had all Lando's responses. Back and forth it went. 9 num reacts, and then Lando says something. And again, I thought, this is a bit rubbish, really. How can you run a scene like that? And how is he going to know what to say and when I'm done with my noise and whatever? So I actually, in very, very carefully in pencil, so it could be rubbed out rather quickly, I wrote in what I thought he should be saying, because we always do our stuff in English, and we know it's all going to be replaced later with something, by the wonderful Ben Burt or whoever. Anyway, later, and that's always how things were done especially in the creature films and stuff. So I knew, whatever we did wasn't going to be used. So I just said to George, can I say these things in English, because it would sort of help us play the scene, because George was actually directing those scenes. Richard Marquand was on another set directing, I think, the Rancor pit scenes, because they were running a bit behind. So George stepped in to direct that. So I went up to George and said, can I say these things? And he looked over what I'd written and thought for a moment, and then he just kind of looked up at me and said, yeah, that'll be fine. And that was it. So I got to write my own dialogue, and we didn't rehearse. I mean, we were in the Falcon, and we were just running lines, before each scene.
Just you and Billy D. Williams.
And they had to cut out the base of the seat. Chewie's seat. It was a metal structure, and they were like really worried. Like, are you sure you need this cutting out? Because I had to lay flat on my back to fit in there. And I said, I can't get in there without it, because it was like apparently a 1973 race car seat that they couldn't get anymore. And they were like really upset about having to cut this metal out of this seat, because now they just reproduce them.
Puppeteers.
How dare you, curse you. So that's how that was done. And I got, because it was all back in the now they have them on these mechanical gimbals and stuff, but back then it was just scaffolding frames and stagehands rocking them around, to make it look like we were flying and stuff. And then they had lights on tracks that would circle above us to make it look like we were barrel rolling and that kind of thing. However, I did get motion sick under there because it's like being in the hull of a boat. You can't see the horizon.
Yeah.
I have a monitor, again, a little chest monitor, so I could see what the cameras are seeing. And I'm being
doesn't make it any better.
All day long,
that does not help.
and rocking and yes, I thought I was going to hurl in there.
The motion sickness is not great.
That
and looking at a monitor.
Again, similar thing when Dave Barkley and I were working on the UK Fraggle Rocks in the early 80s, and we did an episode of Uncle Traveling Matt, where he was on a ghost train, and so Dave had a fake arm around Uncle, on the back of the ghost train or whatever, while he was working Matt, and I was down at his feet working the arms, and we had to go through this ghost train like dozens and dozens of times, and the same thing, like, oh no, I can't do this. Yeah, it's as you can imagine. So the hazards of being a puppeteer. But anyway,
yes, the things we do.
Here we are years later, suddenly 30 years on.
Yeah. You got to play Nine Numb again in Force Awakens.
Yeah.
You were in all three. He was in all three.
Yeah.
Yes?
People kept thinking he died each time, but he kept showing up in the next film, which was amazing. So it's like, didn't he die?
So he lives on. He lives on.
Theoretically, I suppose. Although now it's sort of ambiguous as to whether he died or lived at the end of the last film.
Oh,
because originally he was supposed to die, and that was a thing. But then they cut out a final shot that was apparently there 2 weeks before the release. From my inside sources, and then it was removed of this ship exploding. So, which was the Tantive 4, which was Leia's original ship that had the Death Star plans. Mm-hmm. So there's me thinking maybe they decided they might want to keep the ship for future things and not have it get destroyed just in case, they want some continuity later on, because it's kind of like the very first thing you see in Star Wars. It's the Tantive 4.
I think it's a great idea.
So maybe they pulled that shot out, at the last minute, thinking maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ambiguous in the movie. I think so. I think so.
Alive.
In the novel, he dies. but that's because it was based on.
That's all right. It changes. They make changes all the time.
It's just a book. It's a book. The films are what matters. The films. But they asked me, did I want to come back and do it? So. This time I got to see through his eyes when they didn't fog up, at least. So I got to wear the costume. And there was one puppeteer that would work the animatronic face externally. So I got to do that in 3 films and on the Rise of the Resistance ride at Disney as well. And they had to match the animatronic to my movements for the footage, with the video footage.
That is so cool. Yeah. That's cool.
So I finally got to be... as a kid, as a Disney fan, loving, there's this 8-year-old spending his money on Disney. I bought a book on Disneyland, looking and seeing all these little pictures with my pocket money. And there were the Flying Dumbos that you were in, and all these rides, thinking, wow, that's just amazing. But I'll never get to go there. I'll never, get to visit. That's something that never happens to a little English lad, So and then fast forward years later, and I'm doing Star Wars weekends, doing signings at Disney, and going in a parade, and then in a ride. So it's just insane, really, isn't it? But what a lovely thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how our what journeys we get to go
and
on.
The thing is, we're not done yet, and I really genuinely feel I've not done my big thing yet. I really don't feel that I have, that there's, that I, and yet, my doomsday clock is ticking away. Like the years are diminishing. So I better hurry up because I gotta get this moving. Make something of my life, instead of fooling around like this. So I haven't done my big thing yet.
I'm gonna say this. You said gotta do something with your life. Look, you have done so many films. I'm gonna name some of them. This is just a partial list. Dream Child, Little Shop of Horrors, Labyrinth, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Muppet Christmas Carol. You played The Undertaker in that. Was there anything else that you played in that you can think of?
Well, I did one-liners and voices and singing and of course, doubling for Tiny Tim on Kermit's shoulder because it was too physical for Jerry Nelson to do it, so he wanted me to do stuff like that,
Muppet Treasure Island, Muppet Wizards of Oz, The Muppets, Muppets Most Wanted. I mean, that's a huge list right there, and there's also things that I didn't even mention. And then you did animation for not only some big Pixar films like A Bug's Life and Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
But for Jurassic Park 3 and Attack of the Clones. I mean,
and a Hershey's Kisses commercial, too. they're on a roller coaster. All these kisses are going up on a roller coaster.
Now, how did you learn to animate on a computer? I mean, I know you were drawing on paper.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like you said, as a kid. But what was this about on a computer? When did that come about?
The 90s, I started to use early Macs to organize time codes for editing for our show and figuring out music cues and things like that. So I was using early programs. QuickTime, I think, was hardly even I think it was a little tiny inch black and white flickery postage stamp thing at that time. But I knew that computers would be useful. Then a few years later, onward, I think I had a Mac Quadra or something, one of those boxes that I used to composite puppets onto drawn backgrounds, and I figured out you could make a puppet wink using a post-production animation and motion tracking and that kind of stuff. So in After Effects. So I bought an early computer program that never really worked very well, but I started to teach myself principles of animation, and I knew that this was going to be something that would at least enhance what we do as puppeteers in some way, removing rods and showing full-length puppeteers. And back then, of course, most people were still using blue screen. I think we'd used an early green screen on a kids show that Dave and I were working on, 89 and 90. But Toy Story came out, and it was like, wow, this is like something that Jim could have made years ago. This is amazing. It's about the story and the characters and the visual eye candy, and it was so in a way it was a bit like this is the new Muppets in a way. You had characters that were very abstract but coming to life just like Muppets were. So I was quite intrigued by that, and I used to visit all the yearly computer fairs that they would have in London, and this one particular year, Pixar were recruiting, and so I made it my job to go up to them
with a brown envelope, and inside was a letter.
So I gave them something and went off to watch a digital domain talk. At the end of the row, all the Pixar recruiters were like waiting for it to finish so that they could come and nab us. To hire us. Basically, what they said is we can teach actors to work a computer, but we can't teach people to act. Is what Pixar said. So they knew they wanted people that could act their characters, and they knew they could teach us animation. So Karen Prell, who I was married to at the time, of course, they hired her and myself. They had two positions available.
They had two positions, and you two got the job.
Yeah,
you both got the job.
Yeah, from Europe anyway. And I remember that, Barclay and Karen and myself, we went over. I think it was it before? Yeah, it was before the training started, and we gave a little talk to their a few hundred employees they had at that time. A trunk full of puppets and animatronics, and they loved that because, of course, all their world was virtual, and here we were like animating things in real time in a way. And Steve Jobs was there, and John Lasseter, and all the guys, Ed Catmull. So I remember that so well. And then I think the beginning of the following year, was it 97, I think, or something like that, Karen and I joined their Pixar University, which was something like an 8 or 12 week animation course. There were about maybe 10 or 12 of us in that class to learn their systems and do little tests and animation exercises. And if we passed, then we got hired. So we passed and got hired, and I had a month to go back to the UK, pack up the house, sell everything, and move back out to California.
And there you were. Then you're sitting in front of a
Yes.
computer, right? And you're animating. And is animating, is it like puppeteering, animating on a computer?
In some ways, it was only a lot. It's not. It wasn't spontaneous. That's the only thing. You know, you could use that performing knowledge to create the performance, but then you had to lay it out in almost like in spreadsheets. You know, it's all about numbers, and you had to break everything down. I like the fact that you had so much control over every single thing, though. Every little facial nuance, every joint of your finger, you could control all that stuff. So I like that extra, and you couldn't break it. You didn't get a head-in shot. You know, your arm rod didn't come out. You didn't tear the corner of the mouth. You know, so you didn't have radio control interference. So that was the upside. The downside was that, you know, it would take like a week to do 5 seconds worth of stuff. And back then, the computers would keep crashing quite a lot, and you'd have these things called core dumps, and you'd have to then call in an IT, and they would have to recall your animation from some other backed up source, and, you know, an hour would go by, and maybe if you were lucky, you could go back and jump back into what you were working on again. So it was a very different process. But I mean, for me, I think the most fun was figuring out how to do Woody's Roundup, the 50s puppet show. Because they'd done one shot test, and it was kind of a little bit sort of hokey. It was just like not very realistic and sort of a bit too jokey. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Here's how you could do it if you really want it to look good. So and they took it all on board. You know, I told them where all the strings would go and how the jaw would move, where the pivot should be, and how the eyelids could be drawn onto the eyes, so that when he blinks, the eyes roll down. And then when they return, there's a little bounce, like it's hitting a little rubber stop inside. So if you watch closely, you'll see all that stuff.
And that kind of just comes from your experience.
Yeah, and it was good, but everything had to be hand animated, even the strings. There was no simulation or anything. So the sag and the sway of everything. So I did some early tests, which I think were on one of the DVDs of how to do the whole pendulum effect on a marionette, what that would actually be like. And some of that I actually learned from on Labyrinth. Jim Henson brought in, when we were still building on that and rehearsing for Labyrinth, he brought in Albrecht Rosa, who was a well-known German marionettist at the time, to give us a little workshop, which was basically Dave and Karen and myself learning how to be a marionettist. So I used some of that knowledge for this.
Mike, you have a website.
Do I?
Mike Quinn's Secrets of Puppetry Academy.
Yeah, that's right. Apparently I do, don't I? Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Well, I mean, you're not on it every day. You've kind of done the work ahead of time, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But can you tell me about your Puppetry Academy? Why do you have a Puppetry Academy?
You know what, though? It's because I didn't have that when I was starting. That's the thing. I would have sold my clothes to have something like that when I began.
So many of us would have, I'm sure.
Yeah, you know, and it's still sort of a living, organic thing. You know, I go in and add things, and there'll be other lessons that I'll be adding to one of the upper levels soon as well. But it's really to just pass that stuff on, to be honest, because we want more people to know how to do this stuff and how to do it well. And if they can have a shortcut, then why not? You know, it's all things that came out of the Dark Crystal workshops, and what I'd seen Jim and Dave and Frank teach, and what I'd learned along the way, and what I'm still learning. You know, that's the thing. And never stop learning, still trying to improve. That will never stop and will never change. But it was to try and just get some of that stuff down on, you know, up there for people to see and utilize if they want, whether they want to do it just for fun, you know, as a hobby, semi-professional, or whether they want to go for it and be one of the main, you know, world-class puppeteers. I think it's a good jumping off point, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's that path on it? It's like, I'm sure it starts at a beginner level. Are you teaching everything, like lip sync and what that's about? And then do you go into the monitor work? And
basically. Well, it came out of some live workshops that I gave. In fact, Dave Barkley and I did this in London back in the early, I'd say 94 or something like that. And it was a week-long workshop for about 10 people. So it's sort of an extension of that. So I knew that it worked, taking people from, you know, not even having done anything before, essentially. So I thought, well, first of all, you need to know how to even stand, you know, because people people sort of hold the puppet off to the side, and it's like, well, no, you're not really helping yourself here. And like how, if you're in an optimal position anyway, if you could, which never really happens, but if you could,
right? But if you could,
if you were the king of the world and you could build a set the right height and all this stuff, this is how you would stand. So even just the fundamentals, what's happening with your bones, because you can twist your hand one way more than you can twist it the other way. So how do you get it to look even? So what are the tricks behind that? What's actually happening kinetically with your bones and your muscles? So starting right very much at day one and just building bit by bit, eye focus, and what is lip sync, and how monitors everything, arm rods, live hands.
Yeah. So where do people find this, Mike?
Yes, I think it's something like Academy. What is it? where do they find this? Academy.secretsofpuppetry.com, I believe it is. Yes. Well, they can ask me.
Yeah. Okay. You've also written a book.
Oh yes. It's actually waiting currently at the time of this recording, anyway, for all my secret pictures, which are in California, and I'm not there at the moment. They were retrieved from.
Yes, it's difficult to get to.
It is a little bit right now, but
when you're
I think
there,
that will change soon. But they were in Texas for a long time, and they've since been moved to California just before that whole pandemic thing happened. So at least they're.
Don't know what you're talking about.
No, whatever that. Yeah, I'd read about it something. So So that's very exciting. Again, no, it's really just. I think what I want to achieve from that is it's not so much about telling my story. It's more about showing other people what their potential might be. That you can dream big, and you can think big, and you can be preposterous and do things that should never happen, because that's when great things happen. That's when we change things a little bit, or we help other people in some way. So I think the idea is if I can at least tell a little bit about what I went through and all the things you don't talk about, the doubts that you have, and when a big film comes to an end and suddenly your family has moved away, to another continent, and you're left on your own. What do you do?
What do you do?
We never talk about those things, but it's the reality of being human, and because we become like families. We attach ourselves to each other, and we have each other's back, and we support each other, sometimes in some very long, difficult projects, and then you see them again and again each time. So how do you deal with that? So things like that as well. So I'm not just going for the obvious stuff. People want to hear certainly the stories and what was it like and what was this person like and that kind of thing. But it's more about I think the human condition and being your best self and fulfilling that, I think, to me.
Well,
and then there'll be a
very cool.
But the good thing actually about the because when I initially launched that, I hadn't made the third Star Wars film yet, so I can actually put an ending on there, which I couldn't do before.
That's true, yeah.
So it does put a nice little bow on it and stuff, so which is quite nice. So there's an upside to it as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's very cool.
Thank you.
It's you are a man of many talents, Mike, and I'm so impressed by you. But now I want to see how you do when I ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh, was that one of them?
No, it is not one of them. But this one, here comes the first one. Ready? Here we go. What's the hardest part about being a puppeteer?
What's the hardest? I have to answer quickly, do I?
No, you don't have to answer quickly. I just probably won't elaborate, or I won't ask the
physicality, definitely. As you get older, you pull a stomach muscle. It's like, what's happening? How did that happen? So it's the physicality of it, definitely.
What's the easiest?
Oh gosh, being a kid. Just having fun. Oh my goodness! When it just happens and comes naturally, and you don't even have to worry about the technicalities of it all. You're just flowing. Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's the best.
Yeah. What is your biggest strength as a puppeteer, performer, animator?
Oh, my biggest strength. I would like to think that it's clarity, visual cleanliness, maybe. I hope mimicry, possibly as well. I don't know. Yeah.
And what's your biggest weakness?
My biggest weakness? Oh, probably. I would say acting, but that may or may not be true. I don't know, because I think there's always a lot more we can do with our acting side of things. But but that's on me. I need to do more of it, So I don't know.
All right. So what's one of your favorite things about being a Muppet performer?
Oh my goodness. Getting to pretend that you're somebody you're not. I mean, you get to hang out with all these amazing singers and writers, composers, actors, get to do crazy things, play these characters that are nothing like you at all. We look at the things that in recent years that we've done together. For example, the insane stuff at Hollywood Bowl and the O2 and all the crazy commercial stuff. And I mean, just being in that environment is just, doing the songs, doing the music, getting to hang out with your heroes, and them accepting you as an equal is amazing. It's just there's just so many great things. I could go on answering this for years.
Yeah. I just wanted one of your favorites.
One of my favorites.
Mike,
one of my favorite things is getting to work with Matt Vogel.
Well, liar. Okay, if you weren't a puppeteer, what would be... Oh, wait, I'm going to change this. If you weren't a puppeteer or an animator or a builder or an author, what else do you do? What would be your career?
If you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would have said chef. Yes.
Oh. What's changed in 10 years?
Now, my other...
You hate cooking.
I still quite like cooking. I like doing the vegetables and all that. But no, right now I'm very interested in learning music production, which is again a parallel with you because I know you very much have done a lot of music for a long time, and you remix your album or something recently or something. It's something that in fact I have a single that's I think being released shortly at the time of this recording. It's a fundraiser for a hospice, but where I'm singing on that and working on the music video currently for it. But I'm really intrigued in learning music production, engineering, writing music. Working with keyboards and just composing music songs.
That's so cool. And were you any way a musician when you were growing up in any way?
I wasn't really, although my sister had piano lessons, so she had a little upright piano in the back room, and I was never given the opportunity to have lessons. I wish I was, but I had my tape recorder, and I'd play parts of music back on this cassette tape and try to pick out the notes and start working out chords and melodies and learning them, just going through the song bit by bit.
Wow.
And my mother used to...
You're playing by ear. That's amazing.
And my mother would think it was my sister practicing her piano lessons, in the next room, because she'd hear this thing going away. So there was that.
That's pretty cool.
But I'm quite interested in that whole side of things, definitely.
Well, Jerry Nelson once said to me, Sesame Street's great, but you always have to have something that is your own that you create. So Mike Quinn, creator of many things.
He's right, though. He's right, yeah.
What is that for you? Yeah. What do you have that you would say is that thing for you?
Certainly at the moment I'm enjoying my music side of things for sure. It's something that and I've written all kinds of little short things that I've not played to anybody because they're just, they're experiments, they're explorations, but they could become songs later on. They may well do. But also, I've done my own puppet shows before and productions before, and I'm really thinking I would like to do that again now, start up a new production company for puppets and puppets-related things. I still have a Stan Laurel documentary that I need to finish as well. So, again, the tapes for that are also in California currently. So,
I remember that.
So there's that. I like to do my own stuff as well, and see if I can bring in a few other people to help with that kind of thing. But I'd like to do some puppet productions. There are some films I'd like to do as well, puppet films. I have all these projects that go from like little simple web things all the way up to feature films that I'd like to make. And that's why I say I don't have enough time left now to do what I want to do. It's great.
Well, let's hope that you get to them, Mike. So listen, when are you coming back to America?
That should be early 2022, right? Yeah. I think I have a show over there in February anyway in Florida.
You are? Oh, good.
But yeah, hopefully I'll make many trips across the pond and spend more time over there in the coming year for sure. So that's my plan. For I mean, there's work things, but also there are just so many pals that I need to see that I haven't seen in such a long time as well. And so I do miss that. I've just been hiding out here for a while. In my little cave.
I hope that I see you when you come over here at some point, and maybe we're working together, or maybe we're, sharing a beverage at some point. But Mike, I thank you so much for sitting with me and talking with me on Below the Frame.
Thank you so much. Did I get the job? This was an interview, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You got it.
This is my.
You got it.
I've got the job. Yeah.
Yep. Well, that's it. That's Below the Frame. We will be back with a brand new episode next week where we'll be speaking with Muppet builder Raleigh Cruson. You can get updates and stuff about Below the Frame and Muppets and Sesame Street and whatever I feel like posting, like pictures of my dog, on my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok accounts at Welcome Matt V. Below the Frame is produced by me, Matt Vogel. The theme song was written by Stephanie DeBruzzo and was performed by my band, The Mighty Weaklings. The podcast artwork was created by Dave Holteen at DaveHolteenDesign.com. The word from our sponsor today for Headbands was written by Spencer Lott and performed by Spencer, Chris Thomas Hayes, and Megan Pifus. Thanks, guys. Thanks again to Mike Quinn, Dave Barclay, Bill Barretta, and as always, my son Jack for being a part of this episode. And thanks to you, the fans, for listening. I am Matt Vogel. We'll see you next time when we go Below the Frame. Bye-bye.